Hello all, it's a bank holiday here in the UK, meaning I've had a day off and haven't had time to make a normal Monday video, so instead I'm making this sort of more chill, unscripted video in advance about a subject matter maybe some of you guys are interested in. I often get asked about my books. Oh yeah, don't you know I've written books. I've been plugging my newest one a lot. It's on the floor right now. Immigrant. So I've been plugging this a lot. If you've been watching any of my recent videos, I've been talking about it an awful lot. But it's not the only book I've written. I've actually written two previous books as well. The two Origin of Name books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. These three are some of my proudest achievements. To be able to have three books published and written it was literally a childhood dream of mine. I remember being asked at school, what do I want to do when I'm older? I always said I wanted to be a writer. Actually, I remember one of the people who worked at the school, who was like career guidance during my sixth form year, it's the first year of sixth form. I told them I wanted to be a writer, and they said to me, "Oh, that's something you can do in your spare time. What could you actually do?" I'm like, "Well, screw you." So that always stuck with me. That's a massive tangent about the many flaws of the education system, about how not want to. But no, I am extremely fortunate to be an author, and I just thought I'd make a video so I'm talking about the process, about how I went from literally working at a supermarket to being a published author, because it's, like I said, a lot of people ask me, how did you do that? How did you get books published? Well, I'm going to reveal all in this video, at least anything off the top of my head, because like I said, this video is completely unscripted. I've even got a cup of tea down here as well to prove just how chill and vibes this video is. Look. Tea, yummy. So I guess we've got to start at the beginning, really. How did I become a published author? My journey into getting multiple books published isn't the typical story you hear. I don't know how commonplace my story is, especially these days. It might be more common. I've already heard anyone else with my experience in it, but I was incredibly fortunate. My publishers, Mango, they actually reached out to me first about publishing that first book. The first one, of course, being that initial Origin of Names Was and Everything in Between book. I call it Volume 1 now, but it's not called Volume 1. So the PS1 wasn't called the PS1 when it came out, it was just called the PlayStation, but we call it the PS1 now, I suppose. That's a weird tangent. I remember exactly, I got the first email from them about publishing about writing a book for them, came in early 2021, no, in early 2018 was the one I first got a message about them. That book released later in 2018, so that's a little sneak of how quick the writing book publishing process can be at times. I was actually still working at Sainsbury's, which was a supermarket in the UK at the time, and I remember I was just about to start my shift. How big was Name Explain at that time? It was just before I went full time. I must have had just under 100k subscribers, because that's when I left Sainsbury's, was when I hit 100k, and just around the time I was debating leaving, I was just about to start working. I was in the back storage room and I checked my phone. I actually shouldn't have had my phone on me, but I did anyway, because I was kind of halfway out the door anyway at that point. And I had this email saying, "Hi, I won't reveal names, but I'm so-and-so from Mango, where the publishers were interested in publishing a book with you guys, with yourself. We love your channel." And I was like, yeah. So honestly, I wasn't going out my way. I hadn't had a manuscript written. There's that really romantic idea of like writing your book, then sending it and getting rejected a billion times before finally someone gives you a break. I didn't have that story with my book. I already had Name Explain, what was doing pretty well at the time, and they reached out to me because they saw I had that audience and they were interested in me writing a book for them. So how I ended up being a published author, it was basically down to already having that established audience here, you guys here on Name Explain. And I really think that's what publishers are looking for these days. Publishing is a very, intense business. It's high business making books, and if you make a book and it doesn't sell well, that's not great. So I think a lot of publishing houses these days are looking for authors like myself, to look for YouTubers, other various influencers, Twitter accounts. Are funny Twitter accounts still even a thing anymore? I don't know, but you know the kind of ones I'm talking about back in the day. They're looking for creators online with pre-established fan bases. So there's less of a risk involved with publishing their book, because hey, so-and-so, they've already got a big audience. I'm sure some margin of their audience would be interested in reading a book written by them. So let's go for it, and that's kind of my position. So anyone interested in having a book published, I would honestly say the best way of doing it, try and build up an audience online, because that's how it worked for me. Like I said, that's my own experience. I'm sure there's many authors out there who do have that traditional romantic idea of like scurrying away in the local cafe, furiously writing your script. I write so many scripts, furiously writing your book and sending it to publishers to try and get it published. That wasn't my experience at all by any means. I got plucked, I got selected, which is really handy. So I'm going for another sip of tea. I should just hold it in my hands, nice and like a normal person. It's how normal people hold tea, isn't it? Something like that. Yes, that's exactly how I got it all done. So if you want to write a book, I would honestly say just create content online and try and build up a following. It doesn't need to be YouTube, it can be Instagram. There's loads of great art accounts, poetry accounts I follow on Instagram who have gained popularity. There's a guy called Beetle Moses he does these amazing comic book strips, and he's, I think, just got a book published. That's the way people are going for it, because publishers want money, basically. They want that safety net guarantee of getting a book and making sure it happens and making sure people are going to buy the darn thing, and there's no better way of doing that than finding someone with a pre-established audience, as I've said a dozen times now. Like I said, this video is completely unscripted, so we're just kind of having a chill chat with a cup of tea. Just me, you, and this cup of tea, I guess. So yeah, that's how it kind of began for me. And I remember, how old would I have been at that time? I was maybe 22, 23, which is so young. I think my first book published, I think by the time it came out I was 23. That's so young. I can't believe by that age I'd already had a book published. That's wild. And it's a really fortunate position to be in as well. Like I said, it's been my dream ever since I was a kid. But also, like I said, they reached out to me. I had no plans on writing a book prior to that. So that first book, let me grab it again, dropped a cup of tea, grab my book up again. This first book of mine, the original names was Everything Between. I love it to pieces. I think it's a really fun little book, but prior to that email, I had no idea of ever writing a book like this. So then I got talking with Mango and their people about what kind of book a name explained book could be, and had all different kind of ideas. I think one of my first ideas was specifically animal names. I wanted it to be something like unique that hadn't really got focused on the channel. I'd done some animal name videos at that point, but nothing really sort of specifically focusing on them. So I thought, hey, what about a book about animal names? That could be really fun. And they send you this proposal. Mango sent me this proposal idea. It's got loads of different questions on it, saying, what's the name of your book? Who would it be for? What would readers learn from reading this book? All that sort of good jazz. And I kind of wrote it all out, and they were like, oh, we kind of like the idea, but we think something more general and interesting would be like trying to condense the concept of name explain into one specific book. And that's where this idea came from for this book. I remember the idea of writing a book scared me. At that time, I wasn't even writing like 10-minute videos yet. I was still writing like 2-minute, 5-minute videos at the time. So I was like, oh my goodness, how can I write an entire book? So I kind of took this idea of taking different subject areas. Animals are a big feature of this first book, especially. There's loads of them covered in this one, but kind of talking about country names, just all the classic textbook staples of name explain at the time and still to this day, and condensing them down into one book and kind of making it list based. So if you haven't read this one, each chapter is on a subject. Like the first chapter is countries and cities and towns, landmarks, animals, historic titles, so and so on, and each one of those contains about 10 entries. I think some of them have a few more. And it kind of just helped break it down for me, because that's when the actual writing process began. Once we'd landed on, this is what the book's going to be about, go write it. I was like, oh, okay, then I'll go write a book, I guess, while making videos and whatnot. Yeah, I think I can do that. And also by this point, between getting that first email and starting writing, I'd left Sainsbury's, so YouTube was my full-time job at that point, and slash book writing. So I had to sort of scurry away and write a book. And just as I said, to make it easier for myself, the actual writing process of a book, I kind of, like I said, I broke it down and I planned it all very much in advance. Before I even began writing any words, I kind of planned what each chapter was going to be about and what each subject, what each 10 subjects in that chapter were going to be about as well. So I had like a nice, easy sort of way of writing. It was a real good sort of guiding into how to write a book. It's great. I love this one. Really big fan. Go read it if you haven't already. I've talked about it to death because it's like my baby. What was it? It was my firstborn, I guess, in a way. What was it? 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. It's like 7 years old now, but I'm still a big fan of it. Yeah, so then I got to write in it, and it took so like I said, the book was announced. I got the offer earlier in that year, and I think by about the summertime, by August, September, it was released. So it was actually written super, super quickly, and that's something else I kind of want to talk about as well. There's this idea that you have to like struggle with book writing. It should be this tortured effort. You spend years on the first draft, then you scrap it, and then you write a second draft for another few years. It doesn't have to be that way. Book writing can be a relatively straightforward thing, especially if you're writing a sort of little silly little book like this one. Yeah, I found it quite a joy to write, and then of course once it was written, we went on to the editing process, and they have this sort of, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a specific software where they take the book, they do their corrections, they get back to me, and on the software I can like click, change this, change this, change this, change this, change this. And yeah, then eventually you get a final book. And something else that I said, I had no idea about this book, so a lot of it isn't my own ideas. Obviously I wrote the whole thing myself and I planned out the insides, but a lot of the extra stuff about it, that was all Mango. It was really a joint effort, and that's something else worth knowing, that publishing is a team effort. It's not just you. You have a good publishing house like Mango, like many other ones around there, will have editors, they'll have artists, and Mango did a lot of that sort of stuff, marketing people. It was them who thought of the front cover. I didn't design this front cover. I didn't even think of that name. The original names was everything in between. That wasn't my idea. Mango suggested it to me. I was like, yeah, it's a great one. Then they sent me the cover. I was like, yeah, that's a cool cover. I can't just wait. This first book was very much me just going along for the ride. Like, this is fun. I'm being a published author. Oh, look at me. I can do this, I guess. But it was very much, in a lot of ways, they very much took the helm with this one. And I think that was great. I loved, with YouTube, it's just me toiling away in my bedroom at the time, at my parents' house. I was still living with my parents at the time. It was just me toiling away making videos on my own. So to have like a group of people to go over editing and notes and sort of design stuff with was really cool. Yeah, so that was the origin of the first book. That came out, like I said, and it did pretty well. It's still doing well to this day. There's a lovely audiobook version of it as well, read by someone called John Cowley. That's something else a lot of people ask me about. Oh, why don't you read your own audiobooks? Because that's hard. Have you heard me read one of my actual scripts, like a 10-minute video? I can barely do that. To read an entire book out loud, properly, screw that. I don't want to do that. That's something it's worth a trained professional doing. And John, whose audiobook the first two, did a terrific job with that, because he's a trained professional in those sorts of things. So yeah, that's why I the only way I would do my own audiobook if there was some sort of like language specialist in the room with me who told me how to pronounce every word correctly, all that sort of stuff, because otherwise I'm not going to do that, because that would be way too much effort. I'm flubbing over my words right now. I need to have some more tea to sort of prove my point about just how terribly I can talk. Seriously, despite talking about words for a living, I absolutely suck with them. So yeah, that first book came out in 2018. And I said it did well. It's kind of still selling to this day. And speaking of selling, should I talk about money? Yeah, let's talk about money. That's something, or how much you make for your books. That's something people always ask as well. I don't have exact numbers. I could probably work out how much I've earned from my books collectively over the years, but I haven't got that. But it fluctuates. So the way I get paid, I get a percentage of the copy sold. I won't reveal that exact percentage, but say a number and that's it. Yeah, it's 200. I get 200% for every. If my book sells for £5, I get a tenner. Yeah, let's just say that. No, it's not. Obviously, it's not. That'd be great. But for every, I get a split, and I get paid quarterly in regards to the book sale. So I don't get a monthly income from it every quarter. I get a invoice through saying, oh, you've sold this many books this quarter. You get this much money, and that can really fluctuate. Obviously, when a new book comes out, it's kind of higher. It could be higher at other time, like over Christmas period, it could be high if you're plugging it and whatnot. And other times it can be really low. It can range from, a good few, a good chunk of change to, I think I just got my most recent quarterly earnings. It was just for the first two books, which I haven't plugged for ages. They're both pretty old now. So I think I made 20 quid off of like a handful of sales. I was like, great, cool, an extra 20 quid. I'll go spend that down the pub. So yeah, it can really fluctuate. It definitely is not my main earnings being an author. But it's a fun little bit of extra money, and it comes with that pomp of being like, oh, I'm an author. Oh, you get to say that, which is always really fun. And that's something I always struggled with. Like, when someone asks me what I do for a living, I always say YouTube. I never really say author, because I'm like, what dictates if you're an author? Like, I've written one book. Does writing one book make me an author? I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of does, but that's kind of bubbling away. And after a few years, so that one came out in 2018. After a couple of years, I was like, oh, I feel like I could do with being an author again. So I think it was Christmas 2020, around late 2020. I messaged my people at Mango once again saying, hello, I hope you're okay. I was just curious if we could do a second book. So that time I did ask for it, and they were like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, definitely, we can do another book. So I kind of went back and brainstormed, what could the second book be? Could it be something different? I've got so many ideas for like language-based books. I've got ideas for fiction books as well, which, I don't know, one day maybe that'd be fun. But eventually I settled on the idea of, hey, let's just do a clear follow-up. And that gave us, the original names was everything between volume 2. And I kind of landed like, you know what, I just want to do like a clear sequel, like a proper volume. That's like, even the covers look identical to one another, well, minus the colours obviously. I really like the idea of just doing a follow-up book that was just like a second one that could sit with it in pride and kind of be more of the same good stuff. So I got the thumbs up for this one, I think late 2020. And by summer 2021, late 2021, it was out. It was available again. So like I said, once again, a bit more time than the previous one, but still a bit longer. Still, that's quite a quick turnaround, which I think a lot of people might not expect from the publishing world. I said these can be made pretty quickly, as case in point. So, and then I really wanted to kind of like hammer home some of the ideas. Like, so the idea was once again, because it was such a similar format, it was just taking that basic idea when it came to the writing of it, just what subjects do I want to go, what do I want each chapter to be about, and I kind of wanted it to be a mix of some more left of centre stuff and some more unique stuff, like, you know, more to the point stuff. So what do we have in this book? I can't actually remember off the top of my head. Got things like first names, historic places, tree names, building names, all kinds of really fun stuff is in this one as well. It's just a great addendum. Addendum? Is that the word I'm looking for? A great addition to the first one. If you enjoyed the first one, you'll enjoy the second one as well. And likewise, this one sold really good. You know, I actually think I might prefer this one a little bit more. I noticed, because there was a big change in my writing style in general between writing the first and second books. When I wrote the first book, I was still writing really diddy, basic YouTube videos. By the time this one came out, I'd really extended my how YouTube was working. I was writing longer videos, more in-depth videos. And I do personally feel that's reflected in this book. Yeah, that's what I have to say on that one. It was really fun to go back to the original names. And you know what? I would love to do a third one. Just a little hint there for anyone interested. I've just written another book. I do not have any energy to write another book right now. But if I were to write a fourth book, I guess, another book, it would definitely be, if my publishers allow me to, it would be an original names was everything between volume 3. Because things come in threes, man. Like, it seems weird just sitting at 2. I feel like there should be a third one, a green one. Red, blue and green. Can't be yellow because the light bulb's yellow. But I really feel there should be another one in there to kind of wrap that all together, because things just come in threes and that feels good to me. Oh, that's a nice cup of tea. Well done, Patrick, for making that cup of tea earlier. So yeah, that one came out. And hooray, another book out. Once again, it's read by John Cowley on the audiobook version. He does a terrific job. Really, really big fan of his vocal training. I don't need to go over why I didn't do it again, because I don't want to do it, because that's too much effort. I'm a very lazy boy. And that's something else I love about the writing process. Writing is my favourite part of content creation. If I could just write, I would. YouTube don't work like that. You need to speak and animate as well and all that sort of good stuff. So kind of what I enjoy so much about the book writing is I can just write, and when I'm writing a big word, I don't have to think to myself, oh, I'm going to have to figure out how to pronounce that. Or when I'm writing complex, I don't think, oh, how am I going to animate that on the screen? I can just write, and it's glorious. It's really good fun that I get to just do that. I should probably talk about my background as well. So, like I said, Name Explain is kind of all it is. I don't have a background. I think I have some A-levels. I have an A-level in English language and English literature. That's a lie. I have an A-level in English lit. I have an AS level in English language, which is half of it. I went to uni for a few months and didn't really get on with it, so I dropped out. But I don't have a background in anything like that. And job-wise, I never had a job that included intense writing before YouTube either. I worked at Sainsbury's, like I said, a supermarket in the UK, I worked at a game, it's a video game shop called Game. I worked at one of those for a little spell. And before all that, I volunteered at a charity shop because I couldn't get a job anywhere because nowhere would employ me. And then when I was at Sainsbury's, I left to go do YouTube. So I don't come from like a writing background. I don't have like a job as a copywriter or anything like that. It's just all comes from YouTube. It really is great, and that's something I love about online content. Anyone can do anything on there. You can really kind of just, if you're passionate about something, do it. You can do it, and you might end up getting a book deal out of it as well, which is really great. Anyway, tangent. That book came out in 2021. I wrote it over 2021. I wrote a lot of it obviously during mid-pandemic, and that was something quite solemn about that one. The previous one of the big things I enjoy about book writing is, going out and about. I did often work in cafes and whatnot when I was writing. That one, just written in my office, back at my flat. Do you remember my basement? I love that basement. That was my old office. You've watched some old videos of my mum sitting in my basement in my flat. Why does a flat have a basement? It just did. It was a weird flat. But yeah, so I wrote a lot of it just there while the world was locked down. It was a fun little lockdown activity, I suppose. What do you do during lockdown? I wrote a book because I'm a wanker. Can I say wanker? Yeah, I think so. It's only really offensive here in the UK, and judging by my analytics, most of you guys are from the US anyway. But yeah, that's what I did during the second half of the 2021 part of lockdown anyway. 2020 part, I just kind of vibed, I guess, and carried on making these videos for you guys because I was in a fortunate position where it didn't really affect me at all in that way. But after that, kind of silence. But like I said, I've always had the ideas for more books. And then we move on, so that was 2021, then we move on to 2025, or should I say more 2024, with the release of my latest book, Immigrant Tongues. I've had this idea for years. I think I went to look, my planning document, I do a lot of, so if something curious, my writing, I actually do on Google Docs. I think people like Word, like, oh, what's the best way to write? I use Google Docs. I've written all 3 of my books in Google Docs because I like how it can go so seamlessly from my iMac to my MacBook and everywhere. Really. I can even tweak it on my phone if I need to. I love how just it's in the cloud, it can do what it wants. And I looked at my planning document for this book. I opened it in 2022. That's when I first made the first idea for this book. And it was called things like Language Journeys. It was only later down the line I landed on the name Immigrant Tongues for it. And yeah, sorry, my mind, like I said, it's completely unscripted. My mind's just vibing and just chatting away right now. Because what's the point of having people watch your videos if you can't just randomly talk to them about nonsense every now and then, I suppose. But yeah, this book, and so even though the planning came out in 2022, the basic idea of it went way back. This idea of talking about languages, how they moved around the globe, all that sort of good jazz. It was something that was brewing away in my brain for quite a while, and it was last summer, about around the middle of last year, I finally reached out to Mango once again and said, hey, I've got this idea for a book, hope you guys are doing well. Any chance we could publish it? And so that second one, because it was so similar to the first one, it kind of just went, yep, go for it. Go write as a book. I was like, this one required a lot more. I had to redo a proposal, talk about who the book would be for, interest in it, and so I've had different ideas for names, and yeah, eventually we landed on Immigrant Tongues. I say we, it was my idea. So a big difference with this book and the first book. Like I said, the first book I was kind of along for the ride. Mango took the reins on a lot of things. With this one, I was like, no, this is such like a clear idea in my brain of what I want this book to look like, to read like. I took a lot more sort of kind of personal control. The actual cover design was based on an idea I had. I didn't do the final cover. I couldn't do that. But I had this like initial idea. Like I made a really basic version of this cover. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen right now. Here it is. And I kind of went from that, and then their design team put it all together to make it look as pretty as it is. And fun fact, the arrows didn't exist on the original cover. We had a final cover. Then I was like, what if we put arrows on it? And arrows were a whole talking point. We had loads of different arrow designs, some couple different colours. And I kind of sent those designs to different people I knew, friends and family, saying, what one of these do you prefer? And this was the winning one. That's how we ended up with that cover. But yeah, this one was a big undertaking. This book is incredibly different to my 2 previous ones. How those were like little bullet points, more or less. This one is like a series of essays, more or less, like 30, there's 30 proper chapters in here, some extra bits. Each one pretty big, full of lots of words, not to brag. I think this one's about double, despite not being double the actual like size, it's about double the word count. It's just got a smaller font because that's how these things work. That's how size works, I guess. And each chapter, obviously I made like a basic, so I made a plan. I had like this bar graph of how I was going to plan, not a bar graph, I had like a table of how these things were going to work. I had like chapter, subject matter, what subject would be about. And then, so the initial idea for this book was just to like do random, like kind of a bit more hodgepodge like those ones where it's like, here's a chapter about English in America. Now here's a chapter about Japanese and Palau. And as I kind of put a script together, as a plan together, I kind of started moving it to be in chronological order, to talk about the early migrations first and go on to the later migrations. And that's kind of when this book really clicked for me, and it became like this proper journey through history, through language migration, as I've talked about it so many times now already, being that. And then, so once it was all planned, I knew what chapters, what each chapter, what the subject of each chapter was going to be. I got writing, and I wrote it in chronological order. Oh no, I didn't. That's a massive lie. The first chapters I wrote for this book are actually the first chapter, the Latin across Europe chapter, and the English in New Zealand chapter, because this was so different to the previous ones. Mango wanted like a preview of what this book would look like, and I picked those two to write, as well as the introduction, to show them like a general idea of what this book would be like. And they were like, yeah, cool, go write it. So I was like, great, I've got to write a massive book now, fantastic. So I got to work on writing all that. I would write it, I was working, so at this point, this was only like last year, into this year as well. I was writing it over Christmas when I went to go with my, I went to go spend Christmas with my family, and I was writing like Christmas Eve. I was sitting there writing. I was like, I need to write this book really badly. Maybe not Christmas Eve, but around when I should have been off. Like when I took 2 weeks off to not work, I was still working on this guy. And even when the plan was finalised, I kept on changing it. I was like, oh no, that'd be really good to talk about. I really want to cover everything. So I was like, oh, I haven't really talked about Creoles yet. So I added the Creoles chapter. I wanted to keep the chapter count to 30. So certain chapters fell to the wayside. Some things that were going to be a whole chapter ended up just being mentioned briefly in another chapter. This one was really fluid as I was writing, because I thought, oh, that won't work. Let's move that. Let's move that. Let's move that. And I was writing, literally, I was making 3 videos a week here for Name Explain. And any spare moment I had, I just spent writing. I'd work weekends to actually get this one cracked out. And I kind of got to a point where I was writing about a chapter a week, which was hard. Yeah, it was quite intense. It was quite an intense writing period. And now it's done, I'm kind of like, what do I do now? Like, I just played Donkey Kong Bonanza, in all honesty. Literally, I feel like I've been playing that non-stop since I finished writing this, because that's a really good game. But no, obviously I'm still making the YouTube videos and plugging this book for you guys now all as well. Yeah, and that's finally out in the USA. It's coming out really soon here in the UK and the wider world. I'm really excited for everyone to read it. But like I said, I took a lot more control, like I said earlier, while the first book, and kind of to a logical extent the second book, kind of them and Mango, my publisher's taking the reins. I was like, no, I want to look like this. I even picked the font on the inside. They had like a more modern looking font. I was like, oh, I can make it look more old fashioned and whatnot, that sort of thing, like a more sort of textbook serif sort of font, just to make it look like, I don't know, a different book. Is like, I think the main takeaway was with these two books, well, I'm going to say just the first one, this was very much like a book I had no idea about making, kind of made it and let Mango, and that's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad that they took control. I think it's great. I love working like that. But this book was like, this is my idea for a book. This is a book I really want to write, and here it is. It's something that was much more manifested in my head before it was even on paper. And now it is on paper and Kindle, and hopefully audiobook too soon. I'll keep you posted on that one. And I had to stop filming for a moment there because my camera still got too hot and turned itself off. So I think that's a sign I've been talking for way too long now. I just wanted to wrap up by saying, it's such an honour to be able to write books, and it's a real joy. No matter what happens to me in the future, I'll always be able to know, hey, I did that. I'm a published author. I'm always going to be a published author. That ties back into that previous question. I used to ask myself, am I an author? I think, yeah, I've written 3 books now and they're not going anywhere. So yeah, I just want to share this all with you guys. If you've got any, so yeah, that's another thing. I was actually going to do a Q&A with this as well. But I had this idea so late in the game, I was like, oh my god, it's a bank holiday, what am I going to do? I kind of put up this question for it, hey, leave me any questions about books you may have, but between sending that out, I didn't get a huge response on there, so I might do that another time, but how quickly I need to make this video and the sort of minimal response I got on there, I was like, oh, I probably went that. So, and we've talked for long enough anyway. So yeah, go pre-order my book, buy my book, go buy any of my books if you want to. Like I said, they're not going anywhere. They should be available on Amazon, digitally, physically, for a good long while. There they are. That would be a nice little picture for the thumbnail. Yeah, that'll do. Thank you all. So I'm going to again actually to make it look a bit more proper. I actually want a good picture for the thumbnail. There you go. You always got to get your thumbnail pictures, everyone. So yeah, thank you all so much. Go order them if you haven't read them, or just or don't. Whatever you really fancy doing, because either's good with me. I'm just happy to have them out in the world. Yeah, thank you all so much. If you want to become an author, you can do it. Like, don't be like that teacher at school who said that's something you can do in your spare time. If you want to be a writer, go do it. That's just write online. Try and build an audience up in any way you can, and maybe you'll be just as good as me one day. I want an awful way to end this video. It makes me like a right self-entitled person. I can't swear in here. Yeah, but if you've got any further questions about books, maybe I'll go respond to them in the comments if you want something I didn't sort of talk about, the writing process, publishing and whatnot. You might be interested to know, just leave them in the comments. But anyway, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my bank holiday Monday, because that's what I'm doing right now at the time you're watching. Take care, everyone. Bye.